Thank you for joining us on the news on NTA International. I'm Najat Atitijani. But first, the headlines. Stampede in Kerman at funeral procession of Iranian military commander, leading to shift in burial date. President Muhammadu Buhari reaffirms commitment to bequeathing free, fair and credible electoral process to Nigeria as an indelible legacy. Federal government advocates synergy in signing of treaties by agencies of government. And now the news in detail. The standoff between Iran and the United States has continued to trigger political and security uncertainty in the Middle East. This is coming as political and economic analysts are of the view that if the situation is not de-escalated, it will not stop in the Gulf region alone, but global economy will be affected. Musa Baba Aliu reports.
The United States' decision to launch an attack on Iran took many by surprise, as no one saw it coming, following President Donald Trump's pronouncement on Christmas Day that what America needs is peace in the Middle East. The attack killed a senior Iranian security officer, Qasem Soleimani, while leaving Baghdad, Iraq.
Soleimani has been perpetrating acts of terror to destabilize the Middle East for the last 20 years.
Though the burial of the general that was earlier scheduled for this Tuesday was shifted to Wednesday, 8th of January, as a result of stampede that erupted on Tuesday at a funeral procession. The Iranians and their allies across the world are in mourning and been reacting to the death of the general. Tehran described the killing of its general as a provocative move from US and vowed to retaliate in more painful manner.
Let us not forget the terrible human suffering caused by war. As always, ordinary people pay the highest price.
The manner Iran plans to retaliate and possible American counterattack remain unknown. However, analysts are of the view that their action and inaction will further trigger the political, economic and security fragility of the Middle East.
Middle East contributes about 50% of the global oil production and supply rather, and the Strait of Hormuz is responsible for about 25% of the oil, the movement of the tankers that supplies oil worldwide. So whenever there's a crisis in that region, you can see how much it will impact the global economy because of the dominant role which oil plays in the global economy.
This has begun to manifest as the tension has triggered up prices of crude oil. This may sound good to oil exporting countries, just like what happened during the US-Iraq war in the 90s. However, there is the fear that the gravity may be higher, as this may also affect the global oil production. Musa Baba Aliu, NTA News.
Thank you, Musa. And joining us to give an insight into the US-Iran tensions is Ambassador Rabiu Dagari, who served as Nigeria's ambassador to Venezuela. Sir, you are welcome to the NTA International studios.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much, sir. I'd like to go straight to the point now. As a diplomat, in your expert opinion, will there be any political and economic consequences on the palpable tension in the Middle East over last Friday's airstrike?
Well, certainly that is a very important region of the world, and to have such a crisis going on there is going to be a disruptive situation for the entire globe, especially as regards the supply of oil to that oils the global economy. You remember Saudi Arabia is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, oil producers in the world, and it is one way or the other linked to this crisis because they are having their ongoing conflict with Iran. You know, the Shia-Sunni crisis is there between them, and you know, Saudi Arabia had to endure a drone attack on some of their oil facilities that cripple about half of their oil supply to the world. So that is a very important region that could have serious damaging effects on the global economy, particularly if the oil price goes up as it is doing now.
So, of what impact will all this have on Africa and Nigeria in particular?
Well, we have to remember that the Islamic Caliphate was established in northern Iran around 2014, and it took a global coalition to end the caliphate. So what is happening is that the coalition that has ended the caliphate, that comprises the US, the Iranian militias, the Kurdish Peshmergas, and the Popular Movement forces of Iraq, which is affiliated to Iran, have all worked together to bring down the caliphate. So what is happening is that this coalition has now disbanded, and they have acrimonious relationship among them. So, and as we are talking now, the Islamic State is regrouping. So our fear is that if these two countries, Iran and Iraq, got their eyes off the ball, these guys are going to get reorganized and maybe start exporting their terrorist agenda all across the world. Already they are in Africa, they are in Libya, and already we have Boko Haram faction already claiming to be Islamic West Africa province. So we have a situation that could escalate and make our security situation even more delicate than it is already.
So now, in light of this threat, this emerging threat, what should government do to beef up internal security and economic rejuvenation, considering its impact on oil prices?
Well, certainly Nigeria could benefit from maybe oil windfall if the situation gets out of hand, and then there is, I don't envisage a direct confrontation between Iran and the U.S. You know, there is no power now in the world that can take U.S. frontally. Maybe they are going to do it through proxies, and they are taking their time. But this is going to have definitely effect on the oil price if the crisis continues. So Nigeria might have a windfall, you know. But the way with windfall is you don't know how to manage it, then you lost. You know, we have had such situation in the past where we had the windfall, but it wasn't properly managed by previous administration. Such a windfall has not happened in this country before. But our main concern should be how to stop the effects spilling over into Africa through the ISIS elements that are already in some countries. We have seen the spike in attacks in Burkina Faso, in Mali, and in Niger recently. And these are places that could allow openings that will lead to Nigeria and other places in West Africa. So the government would really need to study the situation and see that all loopholes that would allow for the infiltration of ISIS fighters or affiliates of ISIS coming into Nigeria is blocked.
And finally, is there any relationship between this airstrike and the one that happened on July 3, 1988?
The airstrike that happened when?
In 1988.
1988.
Is there any relationship?
Well, you have to go back to 1979 to understand the crisis between America and Iran. That was when the Iranian Revolution took place, and about 52 Americans were kept hostage for about 444 days in Iran before they were released. You know, so there has been this tension between America and Iran since then. America never maintains a diplomatic presence in Iran. Its interest is covered by Switzerland, by Swiss embassy in Tehran. So what is happening is that there has been building up of tensions between the two countries. There are accusations that Iran is trying to impede the international navigation.
Sir, let me cut you there. Speaking of that, briefly, what can be done to then manage this situation between the U.S. and Iran, in a nutshell?
Well, in a nutshell, is to ask for the two sides to de-escalate, to actually, whatever their intentions is now, is to place maybe move back a little bit. I know there was an attempt by the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to negotiate a peaceful agreement negotiation between Iran and the United States. It didn't work. Macron of France tried to do the same. It didn't, but it is going to be in the interest of both parties to really pull back from the brink, because it is something that will have disastrous effect in the world. There is Russia waiting, there is Israel on the sides. There are so many other countries that would get plunged into this crisis, because Russia is already in Syria, and if America is going to attack any interest of Iran, certainly Syria is not going to be spared. So it is going to be a very complicated crisis. So we hope common sense will prevail, and then they will pull back from the brink.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. That was Ambassador Rabiu Dagari, who served as Nigeria's ambassador to Venezuela. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari has restated his unshakable resolve towards engendering free, fair and credible electoral process in the country. To this end, he charged the Independent National Electoral Commission and the Nigeria Police Force to not only be firm and fair, but provide a level playing and secure environment for all in the discharge of their responsibilities. This was at a strategic meeting with the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, and the Inspector General of Police, Muhammad Adamu. State House correspondent Adamu Sambu reports.
President Muhammadu Buhari has never hidden his desire and commitment to bequeath to Nigerians an electoral process that is free, fair and credible. This meeting with officials of the nation's electoral umpire and the #1 law enforcement officer could best be described as walking the talk. All litigations in respect of the last general elections have been finalized. As a result, 30 national and state assembly elections have been nullified. 2 of the elections have already been conducted, while January 25th has been fixed for the remaining 28 across 11 states of the Federation, and INEC says it is ready. President Muhammadu Buhari wants to see both the outstanding and other subsequent elections as great examples in terms of credibility.
We met with His Excellency Mr. President, who has reiterated his commitment to ensuring that the processes are free and fair and the environment secure for that to happen. We will, using the court order, rerun elections and also some by-elections as a result purely of the act of God, the death of some members of the National and State Assemblies, as well as the forthcoming Edo and Ondo governorship elections, really set the pace for the kind of election that Nigerians desire. And this is our commitment and assurance that we have given the President.
The Inspector General of Police, Muhammad Adamu, assured the President that the Nigeria Police will not shirk its responsibilities in the provision of a secured political environment.
There must be secured environment. And in securing the environment, the security strategy have to be reviewed and have to be enhanced so as to have an election that violence will not be tolerated, value snatching will not be tolerated. Those that usually participate in such actions, like the politicians, the security agencies, and INEC officials, this time around, they will not be allowed to do that. We shall make examples of anybody that wants to use violence to achieve his aim during the electoral process. And this is the beginning of the process to make sure that this country from now onward gets election that will be exemplary to the rest of the world.
The strategic engagement held behind closed doors also had in attendance the Chief of Staff to the President, Abba Kyari, and the Director General, Department of State Services, Yusuf Magaji Bichi. From the State House, Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
Similarly, President Muhammadu Buhari this Tuesday granted audience to the former governor of Lagos State and chieftain of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in furtherance of his strategic engagement with critical stakeholders towards taking Nigeria to the next level. Again, State House correspondent Adamu Sambu reports.
The engagement between President Muhammadu Buhari and Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu on the state of the nation was the first in the year 2020. Discussions held behind closed doors centered on the security, stability, and socio-economic development of Nigeria. Speaking to newsmen shortly after, Chief Bola Ahmed Tinubu described the New Year message by President Muhammadu Buhari to Nigerians as thought-provoking and reassuring.
His New Year message resonated very well. We have to relax, show concern for the people of the country, and see to the effort of the president that we manifest in the new, united and prosperous country.
The APC chieftain was full of praises for the Nigerian leader over his decision to abide by the nation's constitutional term limits.
It's very good to hear it directly from him. And to me, I say congratulations to a man of character and integrity. I was in the trench and in opposition to a thought-term agenda of a former leader of this country with Muhammadu Buhari, Mr. President. I know he will never. He has the courage and the character to refuse such a temptation, even if offered to him. I believe in him, and I believe Nigeria should, believe in him.
Asked to comment on the zoning formula by the governing APC for presidency in the next general elections, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu insists that time is not ripe for politicking. From the State House, Adamu Sambo, NTA News.
You're watching the news on NTA International. It's time for a break. We'll take more stories when we return.
This na how we dey show for holiday. This na how we dey be when you don't tey you block male. This one pass decoder. This na your family groove. Totori your family this season. Go sharply arrange Go TV decoder and Go Tenor will carry 1 month Go TV Max subscription for low body for only 6,900 naira. Go TV. Live it, love it.
NTA International News. Africa as it is.
Thanks for staying with NTA International. President Muhammadu Buhari has felicitated with United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed on her recognition at the inaugural Global Citizen Awards ceremony held in London. In a statement by Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, President Buhari extols the UN Deputy Secretary General for her contributions to global development and relentless priming of world leaders to work towards achieving the UN's Sustainable Development Goals and end extreme poverty by 2030. As the world celebrates Mohammed's zeal and commitment to improving lives through the UN goals, the Nigerian leader believes her wealth of experience, wisdom, network gathered from many years of national, international, and international service to humanity will always be relevant for time and posterity. Meanwhile, the federal government says the security forces of Nigeria have been working continuously to return those taken hostage by Boko Haram to their families, friends, and communities. In light of this, the government has full confidence in their ability to accomplish the task. The Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, said on its own part, government has condemned some of the appalling acts of terror, especially following the festive period. To continue to see these happening solely in religious terms, removed from social, economic and environmental factors, simplifies complexities that must be heeded. Not seeing them as they should be is exactly what the terrorists and groups wish. They want Nigerians to see their beliefs as reason to turn against one another. On the contrary, Christians and Muslims alike are united in their opposition to Boko Haram and the hatred for decency that the infamous group stands for. Nigerians must continue to be united in ensuring that they do not subscribe to the terrorists' message of division. Unfortunately, some leaders and politicians seek to make political capital from our religious differences. As we fight Boko Haram on the ground, so too must we tackle their beliefs. Stability and unity in the face of their hatred is itself a rejection of their world view. This government shall never tolerate religious intolerance. We clearly and unambiguously restate our support for the freedom to practice whichever belief you wish. The politicization of religion as forbidden by the Constitution has no place in Nigeria. The federal government has called for synergy in the way treaties and agreements are signed by agencies of government in order to establish a coordinated approach to government's international commitments. Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, made this call in Abuja while inaugurating the National Depository of Treaties. Femi Okewo reports.
There is a claim making the rounds in Nigeria that ministries, departments, agencies, and even NGOs fly out of the country to attend conferences and end up signing agreements or treaties without involving the federal government or the National Assembly since its existence. Now that is to become a thing of the past now with the inauguration of the National Depository of Treaties. Section 4 of the Treaties Making Procedure Act 2004 designates the Federal Ministry of Justice as the depository of all treaties entered into between the Nigerian Federation and any other country. But due to the uncoordinated way agencies of government sign agreements, the Federal Ministry of Justice has now established a depository that will not only keep records of the treaties and agreements that Nigeria is a signatory to, but will also create access for them, both for local and international reference.
It is indeed about transparency, accessibility, and order in line with the commitment of the federal government to open government partnership, among others.
The National Assembly, which was represented at the event by the chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Treaties, is particularly excited by this development, just as allied institutions too called for the streamlining of the processes leading to the documentation of Nigeria's international commitment. The inauguration of the National Depository of Treaties, the Solicitor General of the Federation, Dayo Akpata, says, will curb contradictions in Nigeria's international commitments. In Abuja, Femi Okewo, NTA News.
And now to conflict resolution. Leaders of Niger Delta ex-agitators under Phase 3 of the amnesty program have applauded steps so far taken by the federal government in deepening peace in the Niger Delta region. At a meeting with the coordinator, Presidential Amnesty Program, Professor Charles Dokubo in Uyo, Akwa Ibom State, the ex-agitators acknowledged that the program has empowered them for a brighter future. Clement Barikui reports.
Poverty, lack of engagement of the youth in meaningful ventures, and a feeling of neglect were among issues that gave birth to various agitations in the Niger Delta region before the launch of the amnesty program in 2009. 10 years already gone by, and youth of the region, particularly ex-agitators, are now meaningfully engaged in different vocational trainings and schemes under the Presidential Amnesty Program.
Me, I'm training people in agric, so it's a plus to me. For before, we don't have these opportunities.
A lot of people are in school, and their school fees, tuitions, and allowances are being paid steadily.
And this Avengers issue, all have gone with the effort of President Buhari and the support of the SC to the President of Niger Delta and the Coordinator Presidential Amnesty Program.
This meeting between leaders of Niger Delta ex-agitators and the coordinator of Presidential Amnesty Program, Professor Charles Dokubo, is meant to resolve issues affecting Phase 3 of the Amnesty Program and chart new ways for deepening the existing peace in the region.
We are going to set a new pathway
so that those issues that have been raised will be addressed.
The sustained engagement of the Niger Delta ex-agitators by the federal government has allowed for daily oil production growth, even as government remained focused on adopting new strategies to sustain the stability and security in the region. In Uyo, Clement Barikui, NTA News.
Up next is Sports Update.
There is a glimpse of hope for